Hello everyone, this is Andy Robb. I'm going to be doing a Rubik's Cube Relay from 2x2 to 7x7, and while I'm doing this I'm going to try and highlight algorithms and methods that I use along the way. I'm not that great at speed cubing, I'm relatively new, so the purpose of these videos is mostly to document my progress. If you want to critique my methods or algorithms, then feel free to leave some helpful comments below. I've been inspired by a large number of YouTube channels on speed cubing lately, like, for example, JPerm or Crazy Bad Cuber, and of course, Felix Samdags and Kevin Hayes channels, where, they seem to post a lot of cube relays lately, and while I understand that I'm nowhere near as fast as them, I still think that relay format is a great way of seeing how other people's methods evolve across different cube sizes. For example, on the 4x4, you could have your choice between reduction, Uw, cage, K4, F3L, or any other number, and a number of other methods that I probably can't think of off the top of my head. So when you're doing 4x4, I don't use any of those methods. I use a combination of reduction and K4. When I'm doing the centers, I just do all 6 in a row because I've tried doing edges first and it doesn't make much sense to me. I can never do it right. Whenever I do the edges first, I then move on to the centers and I break up the edges that I've already done. And so I don't like Uw. I know a lot of people can do it, and their centers, they end up doing their centers without breaking up the edges that they've made, but I can never seem to do it right. So here I'm doing the white edges, and inserted that wrong, so did a Y2. Can definitely make some improvements. My recognition there. Now moving on to the F2L edges, and in this stage I usually avoid doing any yellow edge pairs because I want to save those for the last 4 edges. And as you can see, I've already started doing F2L, inserted 1 pair, looking for the next pair right now. And I apologize for the framing. This is my very first video, and so, I still have a lot to learn. Now I'm on to the K4 stage, where I'm using K4 algorithms to pair up the edges in the last layer. And one of the reasons why I prefer this is you can see them all on the top there. You don't have to make any, X2 moves to rotate the puzzle to see on the opposite side. And sometimes you can see patterns when all 4 edge groups are on the top. That's one of the reasons why I like K4. Onto the 5x5. Now I know that, when you do Uw on the 4x4, it's just called Uw, and then when you do Uw on the 5x5, it's called Uw5, and there are some differences in the approach, but I don't know what it's called when you do K4 on the 5x5. And I know what I do is not technically K4. It's probably some more closer to Uw than it is to reduction. Because I've heard there's ways of doing Uw and Uw5 where, you basically do 2 F2L and then you do the rest of your edge pairs, and that's pretty similar to the way that I do it. Although instead of doing just the 2F2L in the back, you just do all of F2L and then finish up my last 4 edges. Now here I see something. If I do a U2, I can combine all 3 into a bar. I'm done with centers. So now that I've done with centers, I've started matching up my white edges, cross edges. And I don't like the idea of having a K5, K6, K7. I think they're all kind of examples of layer by layer. Because if you're going to be doing F2L before finishing edge pairing, that sounds a lot like layer by layer to me. And since I don't know Ortega, I'd be doing layer by layer on the 2x2 as well. So technically every single solve in this video is layer by layer. So in future videos, when I refer to the K4 method or the variant of the K4 method, which I use in this video, when I apply it to bigger cubes, I'm probably just going to call it LBL for short, because I can't think of a better name for it. Here I try to do a YouTube or U-perm, but end up using an ELL instead. Because you can use K4 algorithms when you're doing cycles on wing edges, but when you're using them on middle edges, they don't. You might as well just use a 3x3 algorithm, which is what I did in that instance. And here I think I'm noticing I don't recognize the algorithm because it's probably a big cube PLL. And so I just do a J-perm to try and improve the situation, and it ends up working out in the end for me. All right, on to the 6x6. I tried looking up the replacement parts for 6x6 on the cubicle, and their names did not match the names that I found on speedsolving.com. If you look up, I think, center or edge on speedsolving.com, they show you this table of 7x7 part names, and you'll see things like outer T-center, inner T-center, for example. But on the cubicle, they call them like center edge, outer center edge. So for example, on the 6x6, the corners are the same, they're just called corners. And then starting with the edge pieces, you have the outer wing edge, which cubicle just calls outer edge. And then the inner wing edge, which cubicle calls the outer center edge. And then going on to the second layer, we have outer X center, which cubicle calls center corner. And then oblique center R, which cubicle calls center edge R. And then on the third layer, we have the oblique center L, and then inner X center. The inner X center cubicle just calls center, which is very confusing. And then going onto the hidden layer, which is kind of this 7x7 parts that you don't see on the 6x6, we have a hidden middle edge on speedsolving.com, but Cubicle calls it the big internal piece. And going in from there, speedsolving.com calls it a hidden outer T-center, but Cubicle calls it the small internal piece 1. And going in from there, speedsolving.com calls it a hidden inner T-center, but Cubicle calls it small internal piece 2. And then going towards the center from there, we have what speedsolving.com calls the hidden fixed center, but Cubicle calls it the centerpiece, which actually makes sense. But piece, in my mind, sounds like something you can see, and you can't see the center in the 6x6, so you should call it hidden, in my mind, at least. That makes sense to me. All right, where are we in this solve? It looks like I just finished centers and have started building the cross. It looks like I got a lockup or a pop almost there. So now that I've covered 6x6 part names, I can tell you it is a pain in the butt when a hidden outer T-center or a hidden inner T-center pops, because you will not see it, you cannot push it back into place because it's between two pieces and you can't see where it is. It's a pain in the butt. Anybody who's had a 6x6 pop will probably know what I mean. You gotta, in some cases, take apart the entire puzzle, put it back together, and that's how you fix a pop. But we don't normally think about that because 6x6 pops are the most scariest thing on the planet. Aside from maybe F perms. That's a J perm joke. One of the things that I've started doing, but I've nowhere near complete, is learning 4x4 OLL. Even if you learn all of, or PLL, even if you learn all PLL on the 3x3 and then you go up to the 4x4, because of OLL parity and PLL parity, there are a number of PLLs that occur on big cubes that don't occur on the 3x3. And, you know, they have names that, you know, kind of are reminiscent of 3x3 PLL names. So there's like theta perm, chi perm, O perm. I haven't really learned any of them so far, but I'd like to. I think it would improve my big cube solves quite a bit if I did. But I noticed, you know, a lot of people just use PLL parity first, and then whatever they get from that's the PLL that they do. Or sometimes they'll do a PLL that like looks very similar to what they're seeing, and then wherever the PLL parity happens after that, then they apply the PLL parity algorithm at that point. So I guess since I've talked about everything that I want to talk about, I guess it's life story time. So I first picked up a Rubiks Cube when I was a kid, probably around like 1989 for just some rough estimate. And I took all of the stickers off. I'm sorry, I was a kid. I didn't know any better. But I don't really consider that my intro to cubing. I really started cubing when I just got out of high school, and I was hanging around coffee shops and stuff, and I learned Rw. And I didn't know it was called Rw. Actually, I thought it was called Atris, but I've since learned that what I was doing was called Rw. Basically, you build the cross, and then you build, the corners, but you don't do the edge part of F2L. And then you do the other side. So you do the white side, for example, and then you do the yellow side. And when you do the yellow side, you do corners first, and then you kind of use the middle layer to build the edges on the top layer. And I know that's not technically Rw verbatim, but I think Rw is probably the closest method today that describes that technique. And I used it for many years. Like I think it was around 2000 that I got really good at using Rw and didn't really have many other options. I think maybe Jessica Friedrich, her page was online at the time, but it was just too far beyond me. I just wanted to solve a cube and drink my coffee, and that was it. So I didn't really start cubing with CFOP until this January. And it's November now, so I guess I've been using CFOP for just under a year now. I've mastered PLL. I'm still working on my 4x4 PLLs. I've learned most of OLL. I think I know everything except the H and the pi columns in OLL in the OLL matrix. So pretty much anything involving the soon corners, I know the PLLs for. I think anything with U corners and T corners I know as well. But if I see like H corners or pi corners, I usually just do fruit until it becomes a recognizable case. And F2L, I don't think you ever stop learning F2L. I mean, even if you just learn the upper layer cases first, I think that's maybe 24 F2L cases. Then you start encountering cases where either the corner or the edge is in the M layer or the D layer, and then you start learning more cases, and then you find cases where both the edge and the corner are in those layers in the wrong slot, and then you start learning F2L, and you can go, I think, all the way to 167 cases. You can look at my website. I'll add a link in the description below. If you break it all out into 167 cases, you could spend years learning F2L and never really master it. So my point is that there's always room to learn in F2L. So back to the solve, I think I'm just about done with the fourth center, blue. And then we get the dreaded last two centers after this. And usually at this point, I start freaking out because I don't see anything logical, and I think I see that I could, move a corner over. So I move that corner over so I get a full bar, and then move the bar in. And now I've given up. So as Kevin Hayes puts it, I go to Commutator Town. So I got one more commutator to do, and then I've finished with the centers. And if you'll notice, like, whenever I do edge flips during edge pairing, I use the six move edge flip. Now I know a lot of people use, what is that, like a 9 move edge flip, and the reason they use the 9 move edge flip is because it has, I think, a sexy and a sledgehammer, which makes it really fast, but not necessarily low move count. But the F2L case that edge flip corresponds to is the one with corner in the right spot, but an edge in the wrong spot. And so I think the lowest move count you can get for that F2L case is 6, not 9. And so that's the one that I use. I think it's like F, R2, F prime, U, R prime, U prime. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I'll put that in the description if I'm wrong. And then when it comes to the last layer, I use 5 move edge flips, and I use them in an alternating sequence. So anytime I do like a flip, slice, flip, or slice, flip, slice, the first time I flip, I use the 5 move edge flip starting with R, and then whenever I need to do another edge flip, I use the edge flip starting with F. Those two edge flips are inverses of each other, and so I end up doing a commutator essentially, or a series of commutators. Maybe you can see what I mean when we get to the last layer. So now we finished F2L. Now I'm doing the K4 last 4 edges. That's one of the K4 algorithms, to move the red, yellow into the right spot. And, you know, all of the K4 algorithms I use are basically the same. It's slice, sexy, slice, anti-sexy, and I just use that over and over again until I solve the last layer. So here you can see me doing some of the slice, flip, slice. But again, I apologize for not being in frame. And I'm doing parity here. And I'll probably do a video on this parity at some point, because it took me a long time to find it. It's not the one that most people use with the F and the B. I found it on speedsolving.com, and it's like algorithm number like 300 on the page of 4x4 parity algorithms. All right. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.